Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to CWG this morning. I know it's been a little while since we met, so it's nice to see everyone. Lauren, do you want to go to the next slide? Oh, perfect. Okay. Krishna's way ahead of me. I am going to start by reading the participants that I can see on my list, and if I'm missing anyone, please let me know. I'm Kirsten Yucatel from SANDAG. Also on the call is Lauren Lee from SANDAG, Richard Radcliffe from SANDAG, Keith Greer from SANDAG, Michelle Smith from SANDAG, Sam Sanford from SANDAG, and Suzanne Martinez from SANDAG. Brent Burge is with us from Caltrans, Eric Luther from APCD, Karishma Becca, also from Caltrans, and on the call with her is Erica Vaca and Nicole Lewis from the Caltrans headquarters Air Quality team. Then we also have Rodney Tavitas from Caltrans, Rusty Wisman from FTA, Sarah Thornburg from the County of San Diego, and Vikarenga from Caltrans, and Kevin Hendron from CARP. Is there anyone that I'm missing? I think I also see Alejandra Nunez and Nicole Lewis, I already mentioned. Okay, well, hearing that we're not missing anyone, we'll move on to public comments. We are not a Brown Act body, but we do welcome the public. I don't believe there is anyone from the public on the meeting today, but we'll just pause for a minute in case I am incorrect and anyone from the public would like to participate.
I see no hands.
Hearing none, we'll move on to member comments. Any member comments or announcements? I know that Richard Radcliffe has some, so I'm going to start with him. And then if anyone else has any announcements, please join in.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so good morning, CWG members. I just have a couple of pretty brief announcements that we currently have 2 formal RTIP amendments to our 2025 RTIP open for public review. The first is our 2025 RTIP amendment number 4 for our regional FY26 Regional Transit Capital Improvement Program. The public comment period for this amendment closes on April 3rd, and this item is scheduled to be going to our Transportation Committee on April 4th, and then it's scheduled to be approved by the SANDAG board on April 25th. And Kirsten shared the draft exempt project listings for this amendment with the group. The email was sent out on March 20th. This amendment, again, it's just for our transit capital improvement program, and there were no grouped project listings in this amendment, just draft exempt listings were provided. And then the second and last announcement is the 2025 RTIP amendment number 5. Again, this is a pretty typical formal amendment. This amendment has been posted for comment on the SANDAG website, and the comment period for this amendment will end on April 17th. Kirsten told me that she will be sharing the draft exempt project listings and group project listings for this amendment following this meeting. There are, I believe, 4 new highway safety improvement program projects that are being added to our Cal 105 HSIP listing in this amendment. So we would appreciate any feedback on that if there's any. So just keep your eyes out for that. And I think that's it for me.
Any other member comments or announcements? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Richard. We have on our agenda today the final criteria, I should say, for the consultation on the 2025 regional plan. You received the draft project list and the exempt project list, and also information on the revenue constrained financial assumptions for the plan. So we're just going to be going through those today. I'm going to share our modeling results. They are going to go through one more QA/QC. So I just want to disclose that up front in case you see any slight changes between what you see today. I don't expect that, and the finding, which we hope to send out to you next week for your review. So let me start with Lauren, can you go to the next slide, please? So you have received the draft project list and the exempt project list. The project list contained the arterials and additional transportation projects. There was no list of TCMs because we have already satisfied our obligation on TCMs, but do continue to fund them and incorporate them into this plan as we have in past plans. Could you go to the next slide, please? So just as context, oh, I should have done this first. I apologize. Just as context for today's consultation, I just wanted to go back over when we had brought the other criteria to this group. In March of 23, we brought the schedule, the emission model and emission budgets discussion, and the public involvement plan. The 2050 regional growth forecast, which is series 15, came to this group in October of 23. And the ABM model came just this past February in 25. Today will be, as I said, the project list and the exempt project list assumptions, transportation control measures, and the revenue constrained financial assumptions. Next slide, please. So the project list that you received was divided into subregions, which is how the 2025 regional plan organizes projects. You might remember if you reviewed the 21 plan that we had corridors last time, but this time we have 4 subregions. It's North County, East County in the rural areas, Central County, and South County. Next slide, please. And there are, for capacity increasing projects, 4 different types of projects that you'll see in the project list you received in each subregion. Complete corridors, which includes managed lanes connectors, direct access ramps, goods movement projects, and rural corridors. This would have been the draft table C12 that went out. There are also transit projects, local bus, express bus, next-gen rapid buses, circulators, regional rail, light rail, and the airport transit connection project. Then there are flexible fleets, neighborhood electric vehicles, and microtransit are what make up the flexible fleets projects. And then there are the arterials, which are table C13, and additional transit projects, which was table C14. There are 181 complete corridor projects in the plan, 179 transit projects total, and 18 flexible fleets. There are also 21 arterials projects, which will be familiar from having reviewed the RTIP projects in the past. Next slide, please. For the exempt projects, which was table C11, there are bikeway, rail, trail, and pedestrian projects, the safety improvement program, transportation system and demand management, which is the use of technology for operational improvements and safety, and transit terminals, which is now the San Ysidro Transit Center or terminal. Next slide, please. As I said at the start, the 2025 regional plan does continue to fund TCMs consistent with past regional plans, although the TCM commitment under the applicable SIP has been satisfied. So let me pause there before I turn to the model results to just see if anyone has any questions about the projects in the plan or the documentation of the project list or the exempt project list. Oh, I see a hand up. Hi, John. I think that you might be self-muted. Can you confirm that, Lauren? John, did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. John, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to know, and hi, Kirsten, thank you for adding me as a panelist and taking my question. I just wanted to say that I'd looked through the exempt list and I had a couple questions, and I was wondering what would be the appropriate time or form, or if this is, to just ask some questions about some of the items on there. I maybe this is just my own inexperience with how projects are grouped in those exempt categories. But you know, and maybe those categories are really ancient and probably need to be updated or something. But I did have some questions about, like, you know, looking at project descriptions that are in that exempt list and trying to understand why they would be in particular categories that they were in.
So this would be consistent with how we have done it for the past some regional plans. So you are correct that it might just be an older grouping that we don't revisit usually in the findings. I'm happy to discuss it now. I'm also happy to discuss it offline or discuss it in the context next month when you're reviewing the finding, whichever you prefer, whatever you think would be best.
Probably offline would be fine, just because it might be largely educational for me and not really edifying for anybody else in the meeting right now.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. We can find a time to discuss, and I'm certainly happy to have anyone from the regional planning group join if you have specific project questions that would be, you know, helpful to have their expertise on.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, of course. Any other comments or questions on the? Okay, then Lauren, will you go to the next slide, please? Oh, there should be a slide in between, Lauren. No, the one with the modeling results. While Lauren sees if this is my error with the slide, or we can pull it up. Let me say that the next agenda item is going to be Michelle Smith from SANDAG, who's going to discuss the financial assumptions, the revenue constrained assumptions for the 2025 plan. And Lauren, we can come back to this slide at the end and let Michelle present if that's easier.
I think I have it. It was the one that was hidden.
So these are our draft model results for ROG and NOx for the 2025 plan under MFAC 17. As I said, these will go through one more round of QA/QC. So if you see a slight change in a decimal point or a number, I don't believe there will be any, but just to let you know, I don't want anyone to be concerned if they see a slight difference in the numbers that you receive in the draft finding next week. So we are within budget, as you can see. This was aided some by the diminishing population. Series 15 projects a much flatter population in future years than Series 14 did. And this is using ABM3 and MFAC 17. ABM3 as Bhargav and Ing presented in February. So I don't know if there are any questions on this or comments. Okay, well, hearing none, I will turn it over to Michelle. So next slide, please, Lauren, and I'll let Michelle walk through the revenue assumptions.
All right, thanks, Kirsten. So good morning. I'm Michelle Smith, the Manager of Financial Programming, and as part of the update to the regional plan, an update to the revenue forecast must also be conducted. The assumptions made for each major revenue source to be considered for inclusion in the regional plan update has been provided. Our goal has been to develop a revenue estimate of reasonably expected sources of funding. As a bottom line, our approach has been to include all existing revenue sources growing at reasonable rates over time. And we are also assuming new revenue sources, which we believe are reasonable to assume given the long-term historical experience of new sources being approved in the past 20 to 30 years. These new sources, however, are conservatively assumed to begin around 2028 and beyond. Can you go to the next slide? Not sure, but yeah, okay, thank you. To quickly orient you with the documentation provided that Kirsten had sent out, we have included the draft regional plan revenue appendix I, and then 3 slides highlighting revenues associated with the draft plan that I will go over. So this first slide is the estimated total revenue. This is going to be in 2024 dollars. So this is the total revenue for the plan. This is $131 billion. And the local revenues include 77 billion, or 58% of the revenues that we see through the end of the plan. State is estimated at 26 billion and federal at 29 billion. Next slide, please. For our core revenues, so we have them split out, and I'll go into that a little bit later. We have 97 billion. So of that, the local is estimated at 47 billion, or 48%, state at 22 billion, and federal at 29 billion. And then next slide, please. And then for our new revenues, as you can see here, we are estimating about 34 billion, which we are looking at a local amount of 30 billion, which is, a majority of the funding, the new funding that's coming in, and then state at 4 billion. So as part of our process this time around, we have done additional vetting of our assumptions through our peer review process, where a team of internal and external experts reviewed and discussed the assumptions for each revenue source to make sure that they are reasonable. The short-term Transnet revenue assumptions uses the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, or CDTFA, sales tax revenue allocation formula, as well as quarterly factors such as year-to-date sales tax collections, the forecast provided by SANDAG tax consultants, Moody Services, and of course, general economic conditions. And then the long-term Transnet revenue estimates are based on growth rate in taxable retail sales tax based on the population forecast of the California Department of Finance, as well as consensus of 3 independent forecasts of real rates of growth in per capita retail sales and projected inflation rates. We have updated the Transnet estimates based on the most recent updates approved by the SANDAG board in February of 2025. So as I stated, these revenue sources fit into 2 main categories. So we have core revenues, which consist of existing revenues. And these revenues which currently exist include Transnet, state and federal formula funds, as well as funding sources which flow directly to member and partner agencies, including developer impact fees, gas taxes, passenger fares, and highway maintenance dollars, etc. And then it's also the continuation, which includes assumptions for continuation or renewal of extension of existing sources. So reauthorization of federal transportation bills, statewide transportation measures, such as the extension of Transnet beyond its sunset of 2048. So reasonably anticipated new revenues, which you see on this slide here, this category includes assumptions for new revenues, including 2 new local sales taxes for transportation, and a new local measure sponsored by MTS, which provides bus and trolley services. Future increase to fuel taxes, which, let me back that up. This is to replace, of course, fuel taxes that we've seen that are going down. And currently MTS is doing polling and holding community meetings to gather input from the public about what projects that they would like to see on the ballot for this new measure. For the to address the gas tax that we know is decreasing, we understand that there may be some changes at the state and federal level. What we are assuming at this point is that the federal and state will address these. However, we do not assume a certain fund type that we did for the last plan, such as vehicle miles traveled. So there's no VMT included in this plan per the direction of our board of directors. So although that we do see a decrease in gas tax, we do assume that there will be some sort of legislation at the state and federal level that will keep that at least level for the length of the plan. And in order to be consistent with the RTIP, we have kept the short-term forecast growth rate conservative, mostly in the 2 to 3% range. Outside of the program period, the growth rate tends to be a little higher in order to reflect longer-term anticipated growth rates. Staff will be developing a transportation network scenario based on these initial revenue estimates. And as project costs are refined, the revenues will be finalized and incorporated into the final document. We believe the assumed revenues and growth rates are reasonable and consistent with our prior experience that we've seen in the past. A new source that we put in here are anticipated revenues that we've seen come through, and they're called anticipated undetermined. And so what that means is we have seen in the past that new fund sources have come up based on certain economic conditions. So we've seen ARA funds come through, we've seen stimulus funds come through. So they're kind of seen as one-time injections of funding for the regions. So we kind of put that into the plan every so often based on historic information, so that we know that certain injections into the economy will continue to happen going forward. And those are the updates for the revenues, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Michelle?
I do not see any hands.
I do have a question, Michelle. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Michael,
Good.
with Federal Highway Administration. I just was curious when you were mentioning about the VMT, the vehicle mileage or the vehicle per miles traveled fee, being removed, which was included in the previous plan.
Mhm.
Just was curious if you have any, you said that the board voted to remove it
Sure. Yep.
for the coming up in the next plan. And I just was curious if there was, if you have any more context on that. Was there like an effect, like with it being included in the current plan?
So
So I
Okay.
could,
So we-
Michelle, I can clarify
Yeah.
some of this for the amendment, if that would be helpful. So we did
yeah, the
have
amendment, yeah.
the road usage charge in the 2021 plan, and then our board did direct us upon adopting the plan to begin the process of amending the regional plan, the 2021 regional plan, to remove the road usage charge. Which now that entire process has been approved both federally and by CARB in acceptance of the amendment. So at present, there is no road usage charge officially in the governing regional plan. And there is not one in the 2025 regional plan.
Okay, so it was in the outer years. Is that why you're saying that it was other than included?
It was removed at the direction of the SANDAG Board of Directors. So we amended the 2021 regional plan to remove the road usage charge.
Oh, okay.
We did still meet without the same margin, obviously, but for the state purposes, we were within our greenhouse gas requirements. And we actually had a surplus of revenue in the 2021 regional plan, and Michelle can speak more to that probably than I can. But that was a cushion against the consequences, as it turned out, of removing the RUC, because we obviously didn't have the revenues from that in the plan. So none of the projects changed. None of the transportation control measures changed. It was just the policy of removing the RUC. And then there were changes to our, it consumed most of the surplus that have been shown for 2021 regional plan. And it did increase our GHG emissions for state law purposes, for SB 375, but we were still within our required thresholds. And we were still within our quality conformity. So while
Okay.
there were shifts, but nothing that pushed us out of attainment standards and, our attainment budgets that we're moving towards.
Okay, understood. So with the removal, and, you know, with the proposal to keep it out, you know, in the upcoming plan, it's really, you know, financially speaking, there's other than really adverse impact in regard to the expected revenues, you know, that would have come in from that.
There are not, like,
Okay.
I mean, Michelle has, you know, it is not included in this. So, well, it, I suppose on some sense represents, you know, revenue we're not collecting. It has not affected the development of this plan or the, you know, the funding available for it. And isn't in any of the assumptions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
John has a question.
John?
Hi, so just a follow-up question, I is just curious, is this the same, this road usage charge, is this the same program that was meant to basically be like congestion charging downtown or something?
No, this was actually, this would actually be the kind of charge that was envisioned to compensate for, obviously, we have lots of electric vehicles in California.
Oh, yeah, the electric,
And
the
so
gas
we
to
are
electric.
losing,
Yeah.
right, so it
Okay.
was sort of intended to be a surrogate for that funding. But it was not popular with our board.
Yeah,
And so at their direction,
Okay.
it was removed. There is still, I believe, a pilot program at the state level for a state
Right.
RUC, but I don't think there has been any real movement or fleshing out of details on that. It sort of is there as a state pilot effort to consider, but not with specific implementation spelled out so far.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Hey.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Lauren, do you want to go to the next slide? I want to, we have our next meeting will be May 7th. And you will have received the draft finding before then. So I'm hoping that if anyone has any questions, we'll still be in your 30-day review period. That will be a good time for us to discuss them and resolve any uncertainties or concerns. Before we adjourn for the day, I do want to give Richard a chance to share some other relevant dates for commenting on the RTIP amendment.
Thanks, Kirsten. Sorry, I forgot to mention at the end of my announcements earlier that the Amendment 5 will be going to our SANDAG Transportation Committee on April 17th, or sorry, April 18th, and then it's scheduled to be approved by our board on April 25th. And that's it for me.
Perfect. Well, that concludes all of our agenda items. So unless anyone has anything to add, we will conclude. Okay. Well, I'm hoping that you will see the draft conformity finding, as I said, by the end of next week. John, I will find a time to talk to you so we can get any of your input before it goes out. And then we will have the May 7th meeting to discuss that. And then it is expected to be released as an appendix to the regional plan in late May. Any questions or concerns before our next meeting, please let me know. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you.